Good day, my friends. Good day. Who doesn't like volatility? Indeed, indeed. This is a little bit wild though, but it's based on traditional markets and news, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is wild. We'll talk about it in a bit. Hey Doug, audio video good? Nice. Nice, always glad to hear that. Thanks for telling me. But yeah, this is some wild stuff, especially in my opinion, the most important, like this is whatever, right? But this relationship is not, right? So you saw this massive dump and you saw how it got absorbed in ETH. That's what you take away from this. And I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. I usually don't like ETH leading, but this is a pretty strong bid. So given I have a bunch of ETH, I don't mind it too much because number go up. But yeah, I'll have to think about this for a while. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of it. But it's definitely a strong bid for ETH. Usually at highs, you don't want to see that. You want to see Bitcoin lead, but yeah, we'll talk about it in a bit. Before I start the show, big shout out to the sponsor, which is FTX, formerly known as Blockfolio. They have pretty much the best mobile app in the game, in the crypto game anyway. So if you want to check that out, the links to that are in the description. And yeah, big shout out to them for sponsoring it. Haven't been able to be on stream in forever. Glad to be back. Glad to have you back, mate. Glad to have you back. Okay, so yeah, let's go over the charts real quick. One thing of note, besides the ETH and Bitcoin kind of difference here, is also that the S&P has actually been stronger than Bitcoin has been. So the S&P is just making clear-cut new highs, while Bitcoin is still like down here. Not too significant given that market structure is bullish still on Bitcoin. But you'd usually want to see it perform as well as the S&P. But this is not like the worst sign in the world. It's just something to keep an eye on. If you should see Bitcoin start rolling over, well, this is still going strong. That's a sign to worry, right? Right now, I'm not worried. We talked about this for the last weeks and weeks, where I've been saying, yeah, it might look like the breakout isn't materializing, right? But I know it's just how it goes sometimes. Sometimes it takes a little while. And right now, still not looking bad, and still no reason to be bearish. On the high time frames, look on the weekly, we've had a perfect weekly retest of support, bounce from that, not terrible, right? As long as we're above that weekly support, I don't see a single reason to sell any of my coins. And I won't, most likely. Unless we go into the 70 to 80K range, start chopping there, I think at that point I'd probably start selling because I think it would end up something like this and then start going back down again. But unless that happens, right, and I mean that would still be quite the move from here, I'm just going to be content with holding. And I think most people are just getting nervous because it's taking so long. And I get that, right? You don't want to see all-time highs take too long. But then again, like crypto is pretty big now. And the bigger the market cap, the slower the moves, just how these things go. Bullish tapering, yeah. The S&P move is based off of tapering news. If you're interested in that, there's a bunch of ways you can kind of watch that. I don't want to give like a shitty summary. You should watch it yourself if you're interested at all. But yeah, if you're like my TA called this dip and this pump, probably didn't. Like it. If you react to like the dump, right, that is definitely something that you can use TA for. Pretty much figuring out which place is the best place to buy and where to sell again. And in general, like just looking at the correlation between the S&P and Bitcoin, right? But yeah, This was basically a news-induced dump into a news-induced pump. So yeah, that's that. You gotta know like where these moves come from, because if you don't, you just it's gonna lead you astray. I've seen a bunch of people try to make sense using like of moves like this using TA, and that's just gonna kind of ruin your sample size or whatever. Like let's say you take these, like you look at the current candle and you're like, okay, whenever the market does this plays out this and that way, and you try to extrapolate from that. Doesn't work like that. Just an on the side kind of note. But yeah, I'm like on the weekly looks good, on the monthly looks good. We actually closed a new high. People were like SFP blah blah blah. On the monthly in general, I don't really believe in that too much. I mean, you could argue this was an SFP, right? Like back here. Let me actually make this so you can actually see it. Like you could argue this was an SFP, right? And then what happened? Like you undercut it, bounced a little, and then completely dumped. That's like, I don't think these kind of patterns are going to help you on the high time frames. It's not how these high time frames work in general. Like all the liquidity grabs, all the kind of traps, they're not gonna be there on the monthly more often than not. Like some examples like this, you can still find, but that's like a macro thing that is very, very black swanish. So not gonna happen all the time. Usually on the monthly, you're not gonna get any fake outs. It's just gonna be straight up. And I mean, the last support resistance flip that was really good was this one. And since then, it's been like, okay, you have resistance here, dumps down, it reclaims it, it pumps, right? And now we do have support here. Doesn't have to play out the same way, but not bearish on the monthly chart. And then on the daily, it's just a good old kind of chop, get everyone freaked out while not doing anything, right? You can draw lines in here if you want to, but in general, like nothing really changes. Like you could argue this is support and that's held quite well. Nothing really changes, right? Whether like this breaks anything up here doesn't really change the macro picture, which the weekly describes. And that's basically the macro picture is it's bullish right now. And that can change, right? I'm not saying this cannot play out bearishly. Like let's say we consolidate in here longer, maybe make a significant stop run to the upside and then start going back down again. Then I would start suspecting that, okay, this entire thing is a shakeout before a move lower. But right now it doesn't really make much sense to anticipate that. Is that clear? Because I went through it quickly, but I think there's not that much like too complicating to say about it. It's just, it's difficult to be patient right now. And most people have problems being patient. Try to like overtrade these moves and then get completely chopped to bits. Hey Dawn, when camps in Germany for the unvaxxed? I mean, I'm vaxxed. I'd like for other people to be vaxxed too, so I can chill. I don't want to have another lockdown, but yeah, I don't see it as you see it. That's basically what I'm saying. Cred said he would be cautious if we don't make a move to all-time high in this week. Yeah, I know. We talked about this during like when we were writing the newsletter. I disagree with him somewhat. I think this can take quite a while and still not be bearish. I think this is just basically testing the patience of people. And yeah, for me, this has to break structure to be bearish. Like, look at this. Like a dump of 10%, 15% would start invalidating this breakout, right? This current one. That's like so close, considering that most people, including myself, kind of got positioned in the low 40s. So you kind of capture 30% still if you wait for that invalidation to kind of jump back out again. And the upside of this is enormous, right? If you think this can easily go to like 70, 80K, I don't mind waiting. Like, I think the upside of it going to like 70, 80, or who knows how high it's gonna go, I think is greater than like just exiting here, like at support, basically trying to be fancy. Not my style. I get what he's trying to say, and I get, like, I agree with it somewhat. Like, you want this to move, because usually when you have all-time highs, they tend to either break forcefully or they just start dying down again. I just think Bitcoin's big enough now where it can just do the typical kind of fuckery that other markets have done in the past, where it just like, it takes an all-time high, it chills, and maybe even reaccumulates here, which would be bullish before doing anything. But yeah, I don't know, like for me, it's not as significant that it moves this week. For me, the significant part is not losing this 57, 58K support. And I've been saying I'm not gonna flip my positions unless we start losing like 50K-ish. So somewhere in here, you can draw this line if you want to. I have a better one on the daily. But now that we've actually spent this much time above 60K, if we start losing it and then start undercutting 57, that's enough for me already. So I'll take profit on my stuff if that happens, and then just re-enter. Like, let's say this goes up and then starts breaking down. I would be more than happy to take profit here, see where it goes, and if it starts going back up again, re-entering higher than I sold, aiming for 80K again. Or like, in that case, maybe even higher, because that'd be quite the bullish setup, invalidating the bearish one that we would get with that kind of move, right? You would think that if it broke down here, it would kind of put in the head and shoulders thing, and actually play out bearishly. So for me, I don't really mind it spending some time. I don't mind it doing whatever it wants to do as long as that's above 58K. How are you going to TP your ETH position? Are you going to look at 70, 80 area Bitcoin move? Yeah. So Bitcoin gets to 70, 80K. I want to see how altcoins react. I mean, if it does, right? It's not a guarantee, because nothing is a guarantee here. It could easily just top here and then just die. I think the likelihood of that is low, but I mean, it could still do it. But yeah, that's exactly right. Like, I look at Bitcoin, I see like what it does once it hits like where I think it should be hitting, which is 70 to 80K. And then I see how ETH reacts to that. I see whether I think ETH BTC has some more fuel in it. Right now, I think it does. Doesn't look too bad to me. Could easily go to 0.08, I think, like something like that. Maybe it starts ranging again afterwards, who knows. But I think like 0.085-ish is like a decent kind of resistance coming from back here. And then, yeah, go from there. And Bitcoin at like 70 to 80K is like 20% up. So that would mean for ETHUSD, 20% up would be like in the 6K range, plus like whatever ETH BTC has left in here, which is 15%. So like roughly like 30 to 40% up from here. Like, I'm more than happy with getting 6K, 6.5 maybe. So not that much more to go, like on like a relative scale, but still, like, considering that every ETH that you have would be worth 2K more at that point, that's quite significant. And then we'll see. Like, I am aiming for too much higher. Like, I'm more than happy with the more than 2x that I get at that point, right? It's kind of how I trade. But if you're like in the super cycle, whatever world, you don't want to listen to this. You just want to hold until your targets is met. Like, that has nothing to do with me, right? I'm just buying these things. Like, I saw the low and I was like, okay, this could be like a higher low. I'm going to buy it and kind of see how much money I can squeeze out of this market. And that's that, right? That's all I care about. And yeah, If that's not kind of what you're in the market for, if you're in the market to kind of establish an ETH position, establish a Bitcoin position, hold those forever, you don't really have to trade those around. Like, I think that's overkill at that point. For me, like, that's just not the goal. Crazy altcoin pumps bad for Bitcoin? Yeah, I still think so. Depends on how shit the altcoins are. Like, if you see Dogecoin and Litecoin pump together, that's like a bad sign. Hasn't done that yet. Litecoin still looks kind of trashy, but like the moment something like that happens, where you get like the old coins that don't do anything, when they move, usually sign that people are kind of like trying to squeeze a dry rock, right? Like they've watched all the other altcoins go by, put in multiples, and then they're trying to catch up with the laggards. That's not something you want to see, right? That's like bad. It's not that these coins are killing the market. It's just that they only rally when people get so convinced that everything is just gonna Giga Moon, that there's no one left to buy their bags, right? So like they over allocate into Litecoin and Dogecoin and that kind of stuff. And then there's just no one left to buy anything, because those are like the last ones. They're so late to the party that there's no one else left to buy, and then it starts dumping. Doesn't always happen, but more often than not, that's the case. 100K too much for you, Don, this year? I mean, I could see it. I'm just not gonna be trading that way. Like, I think 80K is more than enough for a target. We've had basically 2020, from 2020 to now, Bitcoin is up from basically 3.5K all the way to almost 65K. It's up 1,600%. You could aim for it to kind of do like another 2x, go to 100K or 120, but at some point, for me, the move is getting like overextended. Now, that doesn't have to mean like it can't reach those targets. I'm just like, for me, like I've made the money that I wanted to make. I'm gonna take profit at least on the trades that I'm taking. Like I said, if you're holding spot positions and you want to keep those, and you want to like in general like have a position in the market, that's a completely different matter. I'm just trading. And people always confuse the two. And you shouldn't. Like, that's the most important distinction that you can make. Are you trading or are you holding? Because if you're holding, you shouldn't be trading. The worst part about like when you're trading while you are supposed to be holding, right? What happens is it goes up. You're like, holy shit, it went up so much, I'm gonna sell. And then it goes up another time. You're like, holy fuck, I fucked up. I should still be in position. I have grand plans with this, and I mean, I just sold for a dumb reason. Because all the reason that you sell for are gonna look down when price is higher, right? So you buy back, and then it goes down, and you're like, shit, my initial feeling was right. Like, I should have listened to this. And what you do then? It's obvious, you start selling again. You're like, okay, fuck it, I can stomach that loss that I've took in here, and you sell, and then it goes back up again, and you're like, oh fuck, and then you're in the same position, and you're like, okay, fuck it, I'm just gonna buy and never touch it again. And that's like the complacency bonds, and it fucks off, and you lost a bunch of money along the way. You're probably gonna, because of those losses that you've taken, you're probably gonna capitulate lower down, and that's not something you should be doing, right? If you wanna have a position and you wanna hold that position, don't try to be fancy. Just do your thing, which should be clear, right? You're in it to hold it. If you're a trader, however, you buy this and then you sell here, and it goes back up again, you shouldn't give a fuck, right? You sold, your trade idea is done. You bought this, you sold, your trade idea is done. If it rallies and you miss out at 2x, whatever, it's a trade, right? You're gonna get another trade at the end of the day. Like there's gonna be multiple trades every single day that you can take. So that's not a problem for you. And then if it dips back down again, back to like where you sold, and you're like, okay, now there's a better setup again, you can actually get back in easily, right? And if it doesn't come back down again, you can trade another, like there's a bunch of altcoins to trade, there's a bunch of stuff. And at some point, you're going to get a good setup again. So there's a big difference between the two. People just tend to kind of forget about it because they're going to try, like everyone tries to be fancy. Like, okay, I've seen these people trade. I know how it's done. And then maybe it works for 2 or 3 or 4 times. And then it fails for the 4th and the 5th. And that's all it takes, right? Why sell below 1 million per Bitcoin anyways? Not going to make it. I mean, that's your decision. I don't really care. He sounds like a duck. I mean, maybe. So yeah, there you go. I think that's like a good description of like the holder trader thing. Don't try to get too fancy. At worst, do like 2 portfolios, right? If you're in that camp, you have your holding portfolio here. You never touch that. You have it in cold storage. You don't do shit with it. And you have your trading portfolio here, which should be smaller. And you trade with that, and you don't do the same mistakes because you're gonna be happy if it rallies regardless, even if you fuck up a trade by selling too early or doing whatever. And then you're gonna be happy if it dips because you can actually buy the dip with a trading portfolio. So yeah, there you go. With regards to ETH, I mentioned it briefly. I think like ETH BTC to 0.085, very possible. That's a little bit away, not too far. In general, if it breaks that resistance, I have no real resistance left. I don't think this one's a good one. So if it breaks that, maybe we go for the flippening. If we do go for the flippening, I think the cycle is gonna be done, right? So like that's the best kind of top signal that you can get. Not because I don't think it's not because I think ETH shouldn't be above Bitcoin, even though I do think that, but it's because I think this it takes some time for the market to accept that Bitcoin isn't top dog anymore. If that should happen, right? And I think what would happen is you have Bitcoin at 1, if we ever flip them, right? You have Bitcoin at 1, and then ETH comes along, overtakes it for a brief while, maybe for a week or 2, and then the entire market crashes down. Takes a while to recover. I think that would take a couple of months, maybe a year. And then if you're in the flipping camp, then you aim for the real flipping, right? So like what would happen is ETH overtakes it, in my opinion anyway, and I mean I could be wrong on this. ETH overtakes it for a while, the entire market dumps, ETH dumps doubly as hard as Bitcoin does, falls back to place 2, finds a bottom eventually after a while, and I think that at that point you would play for the flippening, and then in earnest, right? I don't think the first try is gonna be the successful one. If there's ever gonna be a flippening, I don't know if there's gonna be one, but if you're in that camp, I mean, it makes sense in my opinion to kind of sell into that euphoria. It's what I'm gonna do anyway. Like that'd be the best signal to get out of the markets in general. I would actually like for it to happen right now because I think like that would be a nice kind of cycle top, no matter where that's gonna be. So yeah. And people tend to like be very angry with me for it because they say like ETH is much better than Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. That's not like my argument at all. I just think in general, like these kind of narrative shifts take time, and the best kind of like people get really, really scared when the narrative shakes, and that's almost always gonna lead to like a market dump, right? You saw what happened with COVID, right? It's our version of COVID crash, I think, when something threatens the supreme leadership of Bitcoin. And at some point it gets normal, right? And then the markets recover again. It just takes a while. Do you think SHIB top for now? I would not touch SHIB whatsoever, knowing that there's a guy that holds 20% of the supply that can do whatever the fuck he wants with it. Because if you give me 20% of the supply of this coin, and this much media attention, I mean, I don't know if you can like pull it off without like getting in major trouble with the exchanges, but you can make a bunch of people bleed the fuck out, right? Because it's easy to kind of like, you start selling, people like that guy starts selling, he has 20% of the supply. This thing is gonna go straight down. You can actually, like, what he could do easily is start shorting this shit, start borrowing, do whatever it takes, sell as much as he can, and then like funding gets completely ridiculous because it's all on futures. People try to kind of counter trade that, and then you just dump a shitload of spot. It nukes down. You basically close your short positions, right? And then buy back a bunch of that spot. It goes basically all the way back up again. People are like, oh shit, it's just psyops, whatever. You can, like, that guy is basically in charge of the market. And given that his early investment was just like, what, 8 grand or something? I'm not entirely sure what kind of guy he is. And that has to, like, you gotta figure out, okay, what is this guy actually doing? Like, what is he ready to do? And until that's clear, like, why the fuck touch this? On leverage, no less. I'm not a Shiba believer fundamentally. And now you have like this kind of overhead thing, like, just makes no sense to me. So yeah, like, you can't do this shit. Like, you can't trade this anyway. Like, both ways you get fucked, right? You could easily, like, you can do this, like, you can manipulate with like 20% of the supply. You can manipulate so much. You don't understand how crazy easy it is to fuck with a chart like this. Even more so when you have so much retail involved. So, like, depending on who it is, what he wants to do with it, this thing is gonna play out. You could take it to 0 if you wanted to. Like, if he has a hate for Shiba or whatever, for whatever reason, after it made him rich, he could take this thing to 0. And I mean, I've seen that happen before, like way back, where like Whale had a bunch of coins, and then basically what he did, he got into a fight with the devs and then just set a sell wall at 1 sat. So the coin basically went to 0 instantly. Like, he dumped it all the way down and then put like a sell order at the lowest price possible. And those coins never recovered. I've seen that happen twice, I think. No way that guy hasn't lost access to his wallet. Otherwise, it's the strongest diamond hand of all time. He moved his shit yesterday and the day before. So it's like, that's the thing. Like, normally I would say the same thing that you just said, but the fact that he moved coins means that he has access, means that you're in danger of that shit. And no matter what happens from here, like, you can't, like, your TA isn't gonna help you in that situation when you have a guy giga rich, ready to dump on your ass. So there you go. Like, it's a big difference whether, like, when that happens after a year of holding and when it happens after 10 years of holding, right? If you hold something like Bitcoin 10 years and you have like 10% of the supply, you're probably not gonna dump on people, right? But like a 1 year, I could easily see it even more so with a meme coin. So there you go. But I don't think that's too interesting because there's not gonna be a play on this at all. Other than probably, like, if you wanna take a trade, the relative trade now where it's like you bet on Doge and bet against Shiba, you're probably gonna win in long term just based off that overhead of 20% supply unless something drastically changes. So like basically if you're trading Doge versus Shiba, right? And you can do this on leverage, you can do this however you like, right? So this is the Doge versus Shiba ratio, right? And if I had to make a call on the entire dog coin thing, and this was like not my opinion a couple days ago before like we've had the coins move, but now I think there's a good chance that you're gonna see Doge recover some of the losses it has against Shiba. I still think Doge BTC is probably gonna go down, but I think it's gonna go down less than Shiba. So yeah, With regards to the other altcoins, we don't need to talk about Litecoin. I don't think that's too interesting. It's gonna get interesting higher up, but like, I mean, a bunch of Twitter people are already talking about it again. It's the same with Zcash. People never stop. And I mean, I'm one of them. I like buying the old coins because it's so easy. Like, you know who holds it, you know how long they're gonna hold it, that kind of stuff. XRP also not interesting. There's a bunch of newer coins that have been moving. The older ones, not so much. But most of the old coins haven't done too well into like this Bitcoin strength. Like you look at Uni, for example, you see Bitcoin and ETH being at the highest, like ETH already pushing new all-time highs, Uni not even close. And pretty much everything. Aave, same thing. Comp, same thing. So there's not that much to do there. They're all losing on a relative basis. And whenever they do that, I'm not too interested. What do you think about rotations? If you can nail it, right? If you get like the narrative right, it's very, very profitable. Most of the times you're not going to. But yeah, there's a couple times in your crypto career where you're gonna nail the rotation and it's gonna feel fucking amazing. Most of the time, like if you obsess about it too much and you try to catch every single one, you're gonna miss every single one. Just with like rotations in general, just make sure you catch the high conviction ones that you have and try to ignore like most of the rotation stuff, because what it's gonna do is basically get you in and out of positions too quickly. And in crypto in general, what tends to happen with people that haven't been around too long is they rotate at the worst possible times, because it's really hard to rotate from one thing that is super hyped into something that isn't as hyped before other people are talking about it, right? So you're gonna chase the hype, and that's usually the worst time to rotate as long as the market is depressed like this. And you can see how and I can show you the Bitcoin charts basically for this. You can see how like heavily punished like some of these coins have gotten. And then you start trying to rotate around from one to the other while the market is like bleeding out. You're not going to have the grandest of times. You're just going to take a loss and then rotate into something else and take another loss. Not the best. So yeah, my advice for rotators, the rotators and like in our midst, is that you should probably just focus on like a couple that you have high conviction in. As in, you think, okay, if the dog coins, or if like Shiba moons, the other dog coins are gonna moon as well, and you rotate from one to the other. It's fine rotation to take, usually works, at least for short term kind of play. But don't kind of try to make up the most complicated narratives. It's not gonna work. Is there any narrative for these large scam wicks down on Bitcoin? You mean this recent one? You could, like, it could have been like a bot that sold, misinterpreting the news. That shit happens from time to time. Could be someone that sees that a bunch of people are over leveraged into a news event and then just dumps it so that everyone thinks there's like an insider kind of trading thing going on. Happens all the time actually, where people are like, okay, we can make it look like we know something, and then you just sell it down. People start panic selling with you, kind of supporting your position, and you get the liquidity that you need to kind of turn that position around. Bunch of reasons. I don't know which one it is for this one, but yeah, it shook out a bunch of people, which is nice, right? You want to see leverage decrease. As long as everyone is leveraged to the gilts, it usually chops. Do you chart the USD or Bitcoin pairs or both? I chart both. I think you shouldn't be trading something that's underperforming on the Bitcoin pair, but you should probably take the entries and exits on the USD pairs, because they're much more liquid nowadays, which sucks. I used to like the Bitcoin pairs more, and I still do. I think like in general, Like I said, you should actually not just you shouldn't touch anything that doesn't have a good setup on the Bitcoin pair. But yeah, your entries and exits should be focused on like the USD pair, because that's where the liquidity is, right? You're gonna get in and out easier. Wasn't there something about tapering? Yes, but you can see like this move happened in crypto, right? So we had a bunch, like a huge wick to the downside and then a move up. And now you look at the S&P and you see that that was a straight move up. So you're like, if it was tapering based, it should have been like in line with the traditional market. So like something special happened here, right? You can't really make too much of that. This could just like legitimately just be one guy being like, okay, fuck these guys, that they have too much leverage, I can take advantage of that. Or it could be someone that knows something, or like there's a million possibilities. The only thing that you can make of this is the relative strength that ETH showed, which is interesting because that means like a bunch of people really didn't want to see ETH go down. I mean, ETH's been leading, right? ETH's been making all-time highs. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's been like an all-time high pretty much every other minute for ETH. Like you have an all-time high, you have an all-time high. It takes what it's basically been doing is, this is an all-time high, like basically this, right? And every single one of these is a new all-time high, which has been frustrating to a lot of people. I don't mind it too much. If you look back in history to like ETH's runs in general, ETH tends to do this. Like it just tends to run up and then has like one big pump and then goes on these long downswings and then runs up again, has a pump, runs up. Like this is the best kind of looking chart for ETH. It always plays out like this, where it grinds up, people get hilariously frustrated, and then it pops. Now, it doesn't have to play out the same way. Like I said, there are no guarantees, but like usually in the recent history of ETH, that's been the case, right? You run up and then you pop, and it takes a while, and people lose their minds over it. And I mean, I think at this point in time, we're so high up that like the pop would take it to like in the 5 to 6K region. I could easily see that happen. And then I would start getting very, very cautious. But until that happens, I mean, like in recent history anyway, all of these things have played out with a pop at the end. If this doesn't, like if this starts actually fading it, I think that's actually a very bearish sign. You don't want to see that. And then like the ETH kind of run takes or is like nearing its end, I think. Because at the end of the day, like we talked about Bitcoin having an insane run, ETH's much, much more insane, right? ETH's up 5K%, up from like $90 all the way to 4.6K. Even if you say 100 to 46K, 4.6K, that's still like a times 46, right? So almost times 50 for an already big coin. That's insane. Could take a break, right? And we haven't had any pullback. If you disregard this, and I mean, that was basically just a bunch of leverage stacked up that got wiped out, didn't even take, like, you can see how it accelerated here, right? So like you have this rally, and it's already quite steep. And then you have like these 2 weeks of straight up, right? So it broke out and then just completely went straight up. And then you have 2 weeks of down that just erased those 2 weeks and a little bit more. And then it went sideways and went back up again. So there's not been a single pullback. If you get a pullback, and imagine you get like one at 6K or something, that takes it into this void where nothing's really happened, people would freak the fuck out. But I mean, wouldn't be too surprising given the history. Then again, like 400 seems like excessive, but who the fuck knows with crypto, right? Like let's say it does do the 80% drawdown again, goes to 1K or whatever. Like chart wise, like I wouldn't mind this too much if it does start grinding back up again. Wouldn't be like anything out of the ordinary. Could happen, doesn't have to happen. I mean, I'm just gonna trade it. That's why I'm like targeting like 5, 6, maybe like middle of 6Ks, because I wanna like dodge that like huge drawdown. Not entirely sure if we're gonna get it, but would be time for one. But maybe we've transitioned into the metaverse so much that we're never gonna get that again. But I'm not gonna bet on it. So what? Solana is up 1,000,000%, still going up. Yeah, there's a big difference between how like big a coin is. You had like Squid Game be up, like that Squid Game token be up a shitload too, and it went to 0, right? But like in general, like you can have like a small coin go up 1,000,000% easily, right? It's just at some point these market caps get real, right? That's the thing. Like Bitcoin market cap was tiny at 20K. It's still tiny at 60K, but it's getting there, right? It's getting where you can actually compare it to significant other real life kind of market caps. And if you kind of expect another like 10K%, I don't know where that's gonna come from, but I mean, it's just my opinion. Oh yeah, that architect guy is super angry. So yeah, that's kind of my view. Like I don't really care if you disagree. I'm just gonna trade the way I always trade. With regards to any other coins, I mean, what do you guys want to talk about? I don't think allocating into altcoins, like besides ETH's been a good bet, and one that I've taken myself, is necessarily the wisest idea right now. Like I don't think with Bitcoin like at the peak, like with ETH already breaking all-time highs and Bitcoin being so close, it makes much sense. But I mean, we can talk about some. The guy mentioned Solana. Solana has been a strong performer, and you can see that against Bitcoin. I actually considered, like I was like, I don't want to buy Solana, and I mean that made me miss this dip basically. I don't want to buy Solana after the shutdown of its network. Turns out no one really gives a shit, which is a good sign, right? You want to have like the no one gives a shit attitude in the market, because as long as that's in the market, we're still in a bull market basically. The moment that starts disappearing, people are like, wait, like blockchain shouldn't go offline for a while, and like ETH shouldn't cost like $200 or $400 or like even more than that to transact. And once people actually like start realizing that that's not how this game should be played, that's actually where the bear market begins, right? We've had that before. That's basically how the 17-18 bear market started, where like the fundamentals caught up with reality, where people are like, okay, shit, I don't want to pay like so much. I can't use Bitcoin, I can't use ETH, and as long as people aren't in that boat, like as long as that doesn't take overhand and people are like, oh shit, like ETH is actually unusable for like everyone besides the people that have been in it for a while. As long as those voices are silent still, we're still good to go. But it gets dangerous, right? You want to have these things have a use, and if they don't, it's only a matter of time when they start, like when people start realizing it and start abandoning one thing for the other. And then it's like, how it usually happens is you have like, let's say ETH, for example. ETH has high fees. People are like, okay, fuck ETH, we're gonna move over to Solana. And then people use Solana more, and that's gonna lead to issues as well, right? That's gonna, because I mean, Solana is pretty new. There's gonna be bugs, obviously. There's gonna be stuff that goes wrong, and they move to Solana. They get kind of annoyed with Solana or with any other of the other coins that they could pick, and then like the money flows outward, and ETH starts getting less and less of a bid, and that's not the case right now. So that's like, we're still good on that front, but that means like if the moment that happens is like ETH gets less of a bid, and then that makes people afraid to venture out into the other one. So like people like go to other chains and whatever, and then they kind of leave their bid, like they leave ETH alone, and that makes people scared because they see like ETH go down and everything's correlated. So they kind of don't want to buy anything else anymore, and then you start seeing the bid disappear, not only on ETH but on everything else, and then stuff goes down. It's the same that happened with the ICOs, right? Where you had like the ICOs kind of go and bid into each other. Like you had like one ICO, and that was fucked up actually. You had an ICO invest with their funds that they made with their ICO into like 3 other ICOs, and then that kept on going, and at some point that has to stop, right? It's just a question of when. And it's the same thing with like these protocols getting overheated in crypto, because it's always the case. Like whenever protocols and like layer ones and whatever, everything gets used in crypto, starts not working anymore. And I hope that changes someday. It's gonna make me extremely bullish when you have a bull run where actually everything works with low fees and stuff. But the thing is, like, the lower fees you have, and this is like what people talk about with Sol, the more, usually anyway, the more centralized something is. And what's the point of a blockchain if it's not decentralized, right? Because then you can just use something, a centralized service, and that's going to perform better, right? So you kind of always have that trade-off between centralization and fees and usability and whatever. And like kind of hitting that sweet spot is really, really, really difficult. So yeah. Link Bitcoin, will it ever go back up again? I'm not too bullish on it. We talked about this on Weekly Open a week ago, and I was like, if it starts closing back above weekly resistance, maybe. So far it's not done so, right? We're right at weekly resistance. So I don't really see a good reason to allocate into Link. But if it starts showing some strength here, I could see it do like a move like that. But I think that would have to be off of like a general rotation into altcoins. And like I said, with Bitcoin being where it's at, I don't think that's likely. Like what you want to bid on right now is the strong outliers. You don't want to bid on, like you don't want to get into like the coins that you like because you like them. You want to get into the ones that have like a narrative behind them. Link doesn't have one right now. You get into the hyped coins, you buy those, you can use those funds to rotate back into the ones that you like more, whatever. But yeah, I don't really see the point to kind of, there's always like the general altcoin land, and then there's like a few like outliers. Solana has been one for ages, and you're almost always better off buying the strong coins than you are like buying the bag of altcoins in general. Like you always want to be looking out for like what's kind of trendy right now instead of, okay, what do I like? Because as a trader anyway, as an investor, you like Link and you're investing in it, you shouldn't really care about this too much. But as a trader, you want to look for these outliers that shoot up when everything else goes down, and then you buy the dip on those. And Link isn't one of them. Link used to be one of them, and ever since it broke market structure in here, it's just been a piece of shit. And that's just how crypto works. The longer a coin is around, the more likely it is to kind of fade out of the spotlight. It can get back into it. It's just usually like you don't want to waste your time. You just want to move on, get into the next big thing, and then into the next big thing, and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of my view anyway. When do you think we top? I think if you get another alt season, as in like legitimately, if we get Link and Dogecoin and Litecoin pump again, I think that's going to be a crypto market top. Doesn't really matter where Bitcoin is at that point. Doesn't really matter like everything else. But yeah, if you see Litecoin, Dogecoin, Link, and maybe Bitcoin Cash or whatever pump together, that's usually gonna be close to the Bitcoin top, and in general to the market top. I don't know when that's gonna happen, but I think like that's gonna be the most reliable indicator besides funding. So you get like huge amounts of funding when Bitcoin rallies. You're like, okay, this is a leverage kind of led rally, and you sell into it, especially if you get like altcoin confluence, like I talked about. I mean, you traders, I'm sorry for the stupid question, but why do you keep putting all these coins against Bitcoin? So what happens, right? What you do when you get into crypto is you decide, do you want to buy Bitcoin or do you want to buy altcoins, right? And the easiest way to decide that question is, okay, do I think this altcoin is going to outperform Bitcoin? So if you look at against like this, like for example, Chainlink here, right? You're like, okay, do you think this chart looks like it's gonna outperform, like as in if this chart goes up, Chainlink outperforms Bitcoin, right? Do you think that chart looks likely to outperform? And then you're like, okay, no, not really. And then you can look at the USD pair, and that can be as good looking as it wants to be, but that's because Bitcoin is going up, right? Whenever Bitcoin goes up in general, every other coin in the market, or like almost all of them, go up as well. It's just a question of, are they going up more or less than Bitcoin? Because you can have like a pretty free ride that is very, very limited in risk if you just buy Bitcoin instead. And if you're buying an altcoin that is in the end going to underperform Bitcoin, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Because every other altcoin has more risk than Bitcoin. So you're buying basically something that has more risk, only to underperform it. And that's a shit trade. So that's the reason why I look at it, because this chart looks good. You look at Link Perp and you're like, okay, this looks good. This is gonna go up. And then you could have been in it for the last few weeks from $24 to 31, and you could have been happy about it because you made 27%, right? From September to now. And then you look at Bitcoin from September to now, and you realize Bitcoin's up 50%, and you fucked yourself by buying the altcoin instead of Bitcoin. That's the reason why. Why Link is the top signal? I think the old coins in general, those tend to be the latest movers. And yeah, if you think it's gonna head up forever with like old seasons along the way, disregard what I'm saying. It's just like that's not been how this market plays out. Usually what happens is Bitcoin goes up, starts chopping. In that chop time, altcoins do relatively well. Bitcoin goes up again, starts topping. Altcoins do really well during that time, like Bitcoin starts topping. Altcoins do really well during that time. Like that's how this has played out for years and years. Now, it doesn't have to happen all the time, and in general, like the outliers aren't really part of this kind of equation. But if you have like really, really shitty coins rally into like a leverage fueled Bitcoin rally, right? You know that there's a bunch of people that are just trying to maximize their gains. Like they're in it for greed, right? They're not in this for like any other reason than greed. They're just buying this and then buying the shittiest altcoins that they can find to make more money. And they are easily squeezed, right? Because like Bitcoin's already up a lot. Their coin is probably up in USD a bunch because it follows Bitcoin along the way. And then they buy in, and usually that means that like the last few that have like FOMO and want to like greed it out are in the market. And then at some point you're gonna lose the bid because no one else is like stupid enough to buy Litecoin at like $500 or $1,000 or whatever that's gonna be, or XRP at like $5 or whatever. Like at some point you're gonna run out of the stupid people that buy these, and then it dumps. And that's usually what happens when the shitty shit coins, like the really old ones that have nothing going for them, start rallying. But it doesn't have to play out the same way. Again, it's just what I'm gonna look for as one of the indications. Obviously also gonna look at funding, also looking at OI as in open interest, and all the other data that you have available, and then also at the chart, right? It's not only the data, it's also, okay, how does the chart look like? I agree with everything but Link. Link big part in Web3. Sure, yeah. I mean, Link. The thing is, I'm not hating on Link, the protocol. I'm hating on the coin, right? And there's a big difference there. And there's like, that's the biggest issue I have with these coins in general. Like, you don't need 90% of these. Like, basically what happens is people build something and they're like, okay, how can I fund it? Oh yeah, I slapped a coin on it. I could use ETH or like something like another one, much easier, but how the fuck am I gonna sell it to people if I don't have a coin for it? And then they make a coin that doesn't really like help in any way. And I'm not saying that's Link, I'm just saying, I mean, a bunch of coins do that, and I don't want to get into any fights with like any kind of community, but like most coins are really not needed. And then you can have the best protocol, you can have the best you can have the best anything in crypto, and it doesn't have to have a coin. So you can, like, it can get used by everyone and the coin can be worthless still. And I mean, you have like examples of this where it's like a bunch of people use like stuff in this market and the coin is still going down. And that's just because, I mean, you don't really need the coin for anything. So that's my view on this. So, and I mean, you can disagree with that all you want. It's just my personal opinion. If we have an old season, you think it's going to happen at Bitcoin complacency bounce, basically, or like either when Bitcoin, like let's say Bitcoin rallies here, does something like this, and then you get like an old season into like 70K or whatever, into the complacency bounce, that would work. Or for me, like what would work also is like Bitcoin goes up, goes sideways. You get like an old season, everyone gets hyped, and you get something like this. And you have like olds go off during this entire part, and then Bitcoin dumps, and on that leg, the altcoins take shit as well. I could see either of those cases, and I mean that's the only way the old coins are gonna move. You're not gonna see like some of these like really old coins move without a sector-wide pump. And the sector-wide pump doesn't have to happen because the sector is so big now. You have so many coins that you don't have to have an old season like you used to. Like, it's so easy. When the sector is like 100 coins, it's so easy to buy them all and pump it all. It's a little bit harder when it's 1,000, and then it's really hard when it's 10,000 and we have more than 10,000. So at some point, liquidity just, like, it's really difficult to pump everything up. So concentrated bets on stuff that you think has a good narrative is still going to be the best play, even if you get a market-wide pump. So, yeah. So that's kind of, I think that's pretty much everything. We don't need to talk about much more. When you say look at funding, what do you mean? I mean, you can look funding up. Like, for example, like funding, Kretz made a guide of this, so like it doesn't really, like, I don't need to technically explain it. You could just look it up on Kretz page. It's gonna be better than my explain up. But in general, like, you have futures trading platforms, or like in general derivative platforms that don't necessarily trade Bitcoin spot, but they trade something else, right? And when the prices go too far up or too far down from spot, what they do is they kind of ask you, like, if prices on those platforms go too far up from spot prices, they ask you to pay to be long, right? To kind of incentivize people to actually get that price back to baseline. And the same thing happens on the other side, just in reverse. And if you have, like, let's say Bitcoin goes to 70K and a bunch of people on leverage try to kind of long the shit out of it to take it to 150 and get super hilariously rich, prices on those platforms go higher. they pay more and more and more, and you can kind of see their euphoria on the funding chart, right? Because no one in their right mind is going to pay like a shitload of money to have like a leverage position open at those prices. It's only those that are like getting super, super greedy, and that usually happens around the tops. So you can look up how high funding is on like pretty much any platform. And there's like pages where you can actually see it in one place. So you can see Bybit funding, you can see BitMEX funding, you can see FTX funding, you can see all of it. But yeah, if that gets too high, you usually get like a temporary top. And if that coincides with like I said, altcoin pumps and stuff like that, it's usually like a good midterm signal that you should take some off the market and take some risk off, and in general just enjoy like a month or two off. Do you think we will have a flush soon before Bitcoin moves to all-time high? Right now, I don't think so, but I mean, could. I think if we see a flush, we would like have a little bit of a problem, because like a significant flush would take us back to 45. And like I said, I don't want to see this. Like, I would hate this. That's actually where I start getting significantly worried about like the health of the market. Because you look at that and you're like, you can see where this is gonna go, and then like 30k isn't gonna hold again if it gets if it gets tested. So like you don't want to get anywhere close to 45. So like, I mean, 58 basically has to hold. I mean, we could flush to 58, but then again, like, is there really a need to after we've done it already? I don't think so. Anything beyond the wick, just lower and then immediately back up, would be bad news in my opinion. So that's kind of like my answer is no, I don't expect it. I don't think it should happen, and I don't want it to happen, which is rare because I usually do want it. Like usually I want to buy the dip. In this case, I don't wanna. I want to see this just go, continue upwards for like the next few weeks. But yeah, if it loses 58k, I could see a flush, but I could see that a flush extend into like a massive nuke. So yeah, I'm bullish, don't get me wrong, but if we get weakness below 58k, I'm gonna take pretty much everything I have off and hope we don't get like completely crushed. What do you think about Plan B's price target? I'm not a big fan of Plan B. Like, I think it's like he's been accurate mostly, but his methods are pretty shit. It's like you're sitting in math class, right? And like you have this idiot in your class that calculates stuff wrong and somehow gets it right anyway. It's like, yeah, sure, that's cool, but like you should be using like, yeah, if you're using shitty methods to get to like the truth and like, but you do it wrongly, it doesn't really pay for much, right? You could argue, oh, but if he gets to the right thing in the end, like what does it matter? But that's a shit argument, right? If your entire argument is based on garbage and you're right anyway, that isn't like your argument isn't the reason for it. It's just like, if you're bullish on crypto, you've been right historically. So it's like I could make shit up as I go, as long as the price is up to the right? As long as I'm saying, okay, we're probably gonna go up. I could say any garbage, make shit up, and people are gonna be like, holy shit, as long as it sounds fancy enough. And in my opinion, that's what he's doing. And I've gotten into way too many arguments with people that follow him and in general like believe whatever he's spouting. So I'm not going to get into one again, but yeah, for me, like what I've been seeing is like inconsistent, makes very little sense, goalpost shifting all the time. Not a big fan, but the target could be true. Like I don't disagree with the targets. I disagree with the method. So there you go. So yeah, there you go. That's my view on the matter. I hope this helped. I'm gonna be around on Friday again. I don't know if it's gonna be a Spaces with Cred or another stream. We haven't talked about it yet. or if it's gonna be a podcast, that would actually be cool. But we haven't prepared anything. Regardless, appreciate you guys coming by. Hope we're gonna go up. Fingers crossed. Not looking too bad. So maybe we're lucky. Big shout out to FTX for sponsoring the show. Like I said at the beginning, they have the best mobile app for crypto spot trading that you could hope for, in my opinion anyway. So if you want to check that out, the links are in the description. If not, that's fine by me as well. Appreciate their support nonetheless, and obviously also appreciate your support. And we'll see each other relatively soon. Have a nice evening or day wherever you are. Bye bye.